Why are you wearing headphones?
Because I'm monitoring the audio quality as we are producing this show.
Why are you doing that?
Because we have changed out a large amount of our audio backend.
What's the problem with that?
Now, what I'm monitoring isn't what you guys are hearing out there in the world. It's actually what we're bringing to tape. But we have also changed out the interface that brings our sound to you in the world.
Oh, hello there. I didn't see you there. Welcome to Dreamland, the Retroblasting podcast. My name is Melinda.
And I'm Aaron.
And today we're talking about the Animatrix, which I want to say is 90s, but is in the aughts.
Yeah.
Solidly.
Yeah, like
solidly
3 years into the aughts, but it feels super 90s because of when the Matrix first landed.
Now, when was that?
I believe that was 97. I didn't write that down because
I didn't either, but I just thought that let's look it up. This is how professional podcasters do it. They look stuff up. 1999.
I just love 97.
So
everybody out there's like I heard the collective cry of no. So here's one of the things that goes
real quick. Just so you guys know, just to reiterate, I know we've said this in the past, but if you have any super chats that you would like to send us, we will be reading your comments and super chats at the end of the show. So if you send those, just stick around till the end. And as we go through this, we'll just accumulate them. All right, please continue. Sorry to interrupt you.
Well, I think this occurred to you because when we were thinking about approaching this topic, I was immediately reminded of several experiences that I've either had or witnessed at Dragon Con, that there is a large group of people who genuinely just love and adore the Matrix and all things Matrix. And if given the chance, you can have a lot of really nice long conversations with them about all of the little intricacies and idiosyncrasies of that. So I just wanted to be kind of hyper aware that what we're doing today is kind of a high level look at what the Animatrix is, with maybe a few sort of interesting tie-ins along the side. But those of you who love to eat, sleep, and breathe the Matrix may have a lot of insights or things that you've other tangents that you've gone on into the philosophy and the
We're
physics.
We're going to cover all of those today. All of them.
What I'm saying is that this is an iceberg, and there's a lot under the water when it comes to this.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Oh, so
I hope you wore your swim trunks.
I did. That's underneath my cool t-shirt that I'm wearing.
Analog Toys.
How awesome is this shirt, you guys? I know.
I need to go check out his site, get the link to his web store, and get myself
It's all on the Iconicon online web store.
You're kidding. That makes it even easier for me to get to.
It's so easy. It's just that easy.
Ding. That's what pro podcasting looks like right there, ladies and gentlemen.
Pro.
Super pro.
Okay, so I have notes that the Animatrix came out in 2003. We already talked about that. And it was produced by the Wachowskis, I guess, to sort of give a little bit more world building and context to the world of the Matrix in between the first and second film. Am I right on that?
It's actually... that was something that I had as like a weird artifact in my brain when I started, thinking about how I was going to approach this, is that in my head, and I don't know if there's anybody else out there like this or if I'm just dumb, but I always remembered this as falling between the first Matrix and then Reloaded, the second one. But in reality, the Animatrix landed within a month after the Matrix Reloaded hit. So I don't know if it's because I sort of had a meh reaction to Reloaded, and then the Animatrix just sort of took over, and the other two sort of came after it in my brain. But they were really close together for the second film, and then it came right on the heels of the second film, and then it was within the same year, at the end of the year, that the Matrix Revolutions came out. So they pulled kind of a crazy move in which they produced both the second and third films almost back to back and released them in the same year. So there wasn't that just sort of holding pattern.
And there was also a video game, I believe.
I played this video game, or one of them. Because
one of the stories we're going to be talking about leads into and sets the stage for that video game, correct?
Yes. So that's the one I played, the Matrix Online, I think, or was it the one that set the Enter the Matrix video game? I played both, but one of them
Enter the Matrix.
Okay, yeah, I liked the online iteration a great deal more, and I think that's because I was fresh off the heels of like Star Wars Galaxies and looking for another massively multiplayer online role-playing game.
All of these things are completely foreign to me, and I'm literally learning about them now. So I was completely unaware that this existed until you mentioned it for this show. I'd never heard of it, didn't know anything about it, never seen it. I've seen the second Matrix movie.
Yes.
But and of course the first one, I never saw the third one. But
you're okay. This is going to not make me a lot of friends, but you're very fortunate in that regard.
I've heard that. That's why I didn't see it.
So I know that we're talking about the Animatrix today, but let's sort of talk a little bit about how those films landed. I know that you saw the second iteration, Matrix Reloaded. What was your gut check on that one? I'm guessing it wasn't super friendly.
So I guess I just feel like, for me, that the idea, when the Matrix first came out, I really liked it. The first movie, I thought it was really cool. I was swept up in the craze of the Matrix a little bit when it first came out, and I was like, wow. I was trying to figure out how they did some of those cool bullet time shots and all that stuff.
It was very hard. And they haven't stopped explaining it to us.
I know.
Ever since.
But I feel like when you get past the shiny, cool exterior of the Matrix, the story itself is a little thin, and it doesn't have enough meat there to support a trilogy. So see, I'm going to be even more harsh. And so I guess it just felt like they were really reaching, and it's a little it's played out by the time the second movie is there. So the second movie and everything that came after it really felt like fan fiction, and this more so than anything. So
this was almost completely fan fiction.
Yeah,
right?
And it feels like it. It feels like I'm in one of those, what are those fan fiction websites from the 90s and aughts, like where people would go and write like shipping stuff between like both the Supernatural brothers and weird creepy
Has Supernatural
things like
been on TV that long? I never got into Supernatural. The Supernatural brothers, I imagine that they're like a house flipping show, like the Property Brothers, but they only flip haunted
That's
houses.
what I want to see.
Wouldn't that be
That's
amazing?
what I want to see.
So they've got like the holy water sledgehammer.
But see, you've got the stage set for some shipping going on there.
Well,
even though it's incestuous and gross, but that's kind of like, it's,
I don't know,
you know what I mean?
shipping,
like, it's just a little bit.
And I'm sure there was plenty of that. I mean, people were really into the Neo Trinity connection, and there's so many other characters that just sort of have brief times on the show, but they leave that door open for like understanding more about the romances that go on between all of them. So
can I tell you a story about that?
Yeah. I'm a little scared.
You should be.
Oh,
so when I'm gonna bring it back to murder.
Oh,
when not really. When I was a nurse in the in labor and delivery, I remember this couple came in and they had their baby. It was a C-section, so none of the family could be in the room. And they had like hidden the gender from the family, and they hadn't told them the name because they had already decided on the name and everything. And they made this big announcement, and it was Trinity. And I just remember thinking, oh no, because this was in around like 2004. So it was like, it was after like the Matrix had been out for a little while, and I was like, oh no, like even at the time.
Yeah, I don't know, like it's almost like Katniss or something, and I'm keenly aware there's probably plenty of people, some of you may be sitting here staring at me, that are named Katniss, but I feel like there are certain kind of movie things that are so trendy that they don't have that staying power with the cool name factor. Like I think Leia can stick around, but it was already pretty solid before Star Wars came out.
Right.
Luke was, kind of an apostle, so there's a lot of people named.
Kind of.
Yeah.
On the side.
Just low key, one of the apostles. So there were a lot of staying power to those names. So after the first Matrix came out, I too was really into the whole idea of it. It was one of the first like big sci-fi things that came out, and it had just enough story in it that it kept me thinking about, like you brought up, the fact that there was so much fan fiction in the Animatrix. It occurred to me that this particular tiny glimpse of a world like that provided a lot of avenues for all kinds of different speculations. So I found myself going down this path of, oh my gosh, so now you could create a universe that, or you could take this universe and say that maybe things like vampires were just people who had somehow not fully pulled themselves from the Matrix, but had figured out ways to do, more with what was happening in reality. And so many other archetypal kind of concepts from our fairy tales and everything, and they all started to have these weird tie-ins where I could say, I could see them building this sort of continuing storyline where you discovered that, this fictional character or this even real character that is now supernatural in our minds for some amazing feat was somehow tied into the Matrix and all the different ways that it could break or be used to exhibit all these other supernatural components. So werewolves, vampires, those are the easy low hanging fruit. But then you would have these like you could almost, and I don't want to like throw shade at any of these famous characters, but you could say that Joan of Arc was like able to accomplish what she did because like in the Animatrix, you see people who are just momentarily able to step outside of normal human capabilities. Now she did all those things with actual just human capabilities, but you sort of have
aliens.
Or aliens.
Anything that's amazing that's ever been done in history, it's all aliens.
Yeah, I mean, you came from the X-Files, so I know that there's some interesting kind of tie-ins there.
Yeah, but I also came from like studying anthropology and how it's really not super cool to say any cool thing that happened in the past was done by aliens. So I'm very torn with like the X-Files. I feel like I enjoyed not because of the aliens, but in spite of them. And I really just enjoyed the FBI government is evil angle, which was it's a super 90s trope.
It is.
A lot of this stuff now feels dated, but at the time, I think it was not. And I think I love the idea of the Animatrix. Like, I love the idea of just like taking the concept of this world, moving beyond the movie characters, which I wish honestly that they had done a little bit more of that. Like because and we'll get into each of the stories because there are 9 different stories that are sort of little mini cartoon episodes, little animated things, whatever you want to call them, shorts, I guess. And the ones that tie back directly to main characters in the Matrix movies are the ones that really don't work for me.
Yeah, and so there's a couple things that I kind of had to go on there, and one of them is that George Lucas wanted to do something like this with Star Wars, or he said he has. He says now that he did.
He did with droids a little bit.
Yeah, he wanted to allow other writers and other people who were in totally different disciplines of filmmaking have a stab at creating stories in that universe. And so I feel like I see more of that with directors. I feel like that's probably something that happens when you create something that's really just hits like an archetypal kind of property. You're like, all right, let's let a bunch of people play with it and see what comes out of that. And so this was, I believe, an attempt to do that. The other thing about the Matrix is that it's so deeply rooted in things like the Hong Kong, wire fighting scene. It's so deeply rooted in their love of Japanese animation that I feel like they wanted to give back and bring awareness to some of these things that were happening over the sea. Because back in the late 90s and early aughts, there were super popular anime things here in America. But even today, I feel like a purely American audience can have a hard time sort of gelling with a Japanese animation movie because there's just so many cultural differences sometimes. And there's so many things that are normalized in those movies that just don't quite fit into the way that the average person here, sees entertainment. So you'll see sort of like relationship concepts and other violence concepts and things like that in them that are just sort of like really jarring. And they're like, nope, I'm going to put that over there. So they wanted to take an opportunity, I think, to go get some of these giants of animation and bring them in and give them sort of a space to do that. And to your point, where the Wachowskis either wrote the story or it was intended to be a tie-in to another Matrix piece, it felt like when George Lucas was trying to push his idea of what Star Wars needed to be, instead of letting these other directors and writers that came and kind of have their own way. So it felt a little stilted to me, especially the final flight of the Osiris, for example. It just feels more like a like, here, look at all the things we can do with technology. We just need a little bit of story to hang it on.
Well, and I think that's the part that feels dated, right? Because at the time, the technology was new. And so people, believe it or not, watching it now, people at the time were like, oh my God, are those real people?
Yeah, I remember that.
But you watch it now and you're like, oh, it's video game stuff. Like I'm watching a video game. I feel like I'm looking at stills from a video game. And so I think let's go ahead and start kind of moving into each of the stories, and we can kind of talk about them because they don't tie together except for there are two that are part 1 and part 2. So those two do tie together, and the rest of them are just held together by the fact that they're all in universe. So if you've never seen the Animatrix, that's okay. You don't need to have seen it. We're going to walk you through it. So you don't have to watch it unless you want to. All right. So let's start off with the fact that on the DVD, did you have the DVD? Did you?
Yeah, way back in the day, I went out and got the DVD when it came out.
So when the DVD came out, The Last Flight of the Osiris was the first short in the sequence. But if you happen to have HBO Max right now, they have the Animatrix for viewing there, and it is the last. So they just moved the first one to the last slot. And that is actually how it was aired when they showed this in theaters. They had a limited run in theaters.
Okay.
And so they basically just take that first movie and just move it to the end. Now, or movie, I don't know what to call these things. Are they shorts? They're
vignettes, they're segments.
Okay, so they take first segment.
I think of it like a collection of short stories because right now you see this a lot in the science fiction world, probably also in the fantasy world, but I live very heavily in the science fiction side. You see a lot of times where your favorite science fiction authors like Peter Watts and some of the others will all get together and do like a themed book. And it's not always like the Animatrix, which is super heavily themed, but but it's sometimes just like, here's a general idea, go get me a story and get back to me in September with it. And so I feel like they kind of did something like this, but in a video format.
Well, I'm going to call them shorts because to me, they look like short films, little short.
And I think that's how they're annotated on Wikipedia.
Yeah. So we'll go with that. So because this is the order I saw them in and everything's about me, I'm going to start with the Second Renaissance parts 1 and 2. I think we can kind of talk about them together. I'm not really sure why they made them 2 separate parts.
That feels like artistic license a little bit. And it may have been because of a restriction of how long each short was allowed to be. And then later on in the process, they were like, I really want your story, but it's too big to fit in what we've told all the other writers they have to do. So we're going to give you 2 segments on the production. Well,
so basically the short version of these 2 movements, I'll just use different synonyms throughout.
Yeah.
It's the story of like the origin story of how modern day humans and our world moves into the world of the Matrix. So it's the whole backstory of the politics and the social movements and what happened historically that led from here to there. And in my opinion, it really breaks the entire Matrix movie. Like it completely breaks everything. It's such a weird choice to me. Like, why would they do such a thing? Why would they? I mean, I know why they did it, but I don't know if their intent was to completely break their movie. But so the Matrix, in the movie The Matrix, when you're watching it, you really, you're totally on the side of Morpheus and Trinity and all these people who are trying to fight against this oppressive, evil robot AI regime like Terminator, where the machines are evil and the humans are these, underdogs, and you want them to win, and you're rooting for them because they're like you and all this. And what is revealed is that humans are monsters, which is not a big reveal if you've ever met one. But I mean,
I haven't yet, but I've heard really terrible things.
Humans deserved everything they got. And so you're like, well, maybe the robots should just kill all the humans. And now throughout the entire thing, I'm like, yeah, I'm on the side of the machines. So going from we're starting off with flip the switch. Now you're on the side of the machine. So when you watch all of these through that lens, it's a very different experience. And I don't know if that was their intent. Like, did you get that at all?
No, it didn't. It didn't break the movie for me at all. And that, I think that's because I didn't zoom in on certain parts of it in quite the same way. I feel like I've always known that the tendency of humanity is going to be abusive to and to use technology like this because it's available. There's just a horrible, horrible history of that all the way through our lifetimes, and each of us has a responsibility to find ways to prevent that and to, you know, keep things better. But I feel like, to answer sort of your concern about them breaking the movie, I felt like, in my mind, Neo and Trinity and everybody at this fictitious Zion that we didn't get to see in the first movie, right? All of them sort of came out of the Matrix at a different point. So they are almost, in my mind, disconnected from the collection of humans that led to the Matrix. And they are born of a collection of humans, sort of like the robots sort of woke up in a world where they were ruled by us. These are people who woke up in a world that was ruled by the robots. And it's the cycle, rinse and repeat. I mean, if you really want to get into it, what's probably going to happen is either the humans are going to totally win, and then things will be fine for a while, and then Dune happens. Then the Butlerian Jihad, and we destroy all the machines, and everybody has to become a thinking machine. And let's just talk about Dune. I'm just kidding. Okay. But you know, I think in my mind, it sort of falls into that camp of just sort of not. I don't really have a problem with the fact that it makes me think poorly of the humans that were in the first movie, because yeah, there has to be an impetus for the robots to want to rise up, and that has a lot to do with them kind of waking up and getting a conscience, you know, in their minds, and then realizing they were being taken advantage.
Right, but when you go through, so let's just kind of, I'm going to quickly give you the synopsis of what this is. So this is both movies, or both vignettes, or whatever you want to call them.
Skits.
Humans create the robots as servants. And being released from labor, humans become slothful, conceited, and corrupt. Now, I would argue that they already were. Also, it's interesting to sort of look at this through a 2021 lens, because so many jobs have been replaced by robots, and I don't think that it's made us become slothful. I think it's made us become unemployed and have different types of problems. But that's sort of just an aside.
And this is early days on that. This is them looking forward at a world, because when I think about when this came out, it was back when computer graphics weren't the kind of thing that you would ever believe would simulate reality. Mm-hmm. So in a lot of ways, this is why people see the first Matrix movie as being incredibly like prescient, because there are a lot of issues that come out of the advent of AI, and they're not always the same things you see here, but this was one of the first instances, besides like old school science fiction, where they really started asking that question. Anyway, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
So in 2090, an android that's named after Bigger Thomas from Native Son, but it's B166ER, kills his family, including all the family pets for some reason, in self-defense. That's his thing, because he just didn't want to die. He didn't want to be put out of commission. And for some reason, his master, his owner, was going to put him out of commission. And his attorney was named Clarence Drummond, who is a clear reference to both Clarence Darrow and Henry Drummond from Inherit the Wind. He quoted a famous line from the Dred Scott case about, so they're making very clear, they make a ton of visual and verbal references to both American slavery and the Holocaust, in terms of visuals and taking bulldozers and putting all the corpses or the bodies of these robots into mass graves. It's very heavy-handed.
It is.
And there's a lot of stuff in terms of this court case that happened, which got everybody in the world got really mad about the outcome. So it was kind of like an O.J. Simpson type of case, or one of the many, many other ones that we've unfortunately had, where humans on both sides are arguing, and then there are some humans that are sympathetic to the robots and the machines, and some that are not. There's a lot of similarities too to Measure of a Man episode of Star Trek Next Gen. If you're familiar with Data, is he a person or is he not? Because he's an AI. Does he have rights? Is he, so the robot loses the court case and is destroyed. And then because of that, riots ensue. There's a million machine march. Again, very on the nose.
That's one of the most egregious, in my opinion.
I feel like it's a little weird. anyway,
I
it
think
is
you
what
could
it
have
is.
achieved the similarity to something like that without, taking the name. But if I
Yeah.
had a note to send back in time, it would be, this isn't going to age
It's
well.
not. It doesn't age well. But so then the governments destroy the robots and their human supporters, or a lot of them, and some escape to this Mesopotamia area and build their own nation called 01, which is like the whole binary code type.
Oh yeah,
of
we got it. This is heavy-handed to nerds.
It's again, and it prospers. Their nation prospers where a lot of the human nations don't prosper. So it's kind of like, also it becomes like a North-South analogy in the Civil War times. And so the humans start blockading and embargoing 01, and then they don't allow 01 to join the United Nations. And then the United Nations bomb 01, but that doesn't kill the robots because they're not sensitive to heat and radiation, which is weird. And then 01 declares war on mankind. So they're escalating, right? They're doing the Cold War escalation. And then they finally start wiping out humanity because they kind of have to. And mankind surrenders, and then humans launch this thing called Operation Dark Storm, where they cover the sky with nanites and block out the solar energy because apparently the robots need the solar energy to survive. But so do we, so I'm not really sure what their thinking was, because it's completely going to kill all humanity. I don't even understand in the Matrix movies how humans are surviving without solar energy to grow food or do any of the things, but what do I know with my very small, tiny woman brain?
Stop.
Eventually,
Stop
after the machines win the war, they turn, because they don't have solar power anymore, they have to use humans as batteries, essentially, which is, I think, what they say in the Matrix. They use humans like batteries, and they basically plug into the back of your brain, and it seems like a fitting punishment for humanity. And I'm like, cool, it's all wrapped up. The end.
Nice and neat. And now we have like a Dyson sphere situation without the benefits of being a Dyson sphere. It's just like this enclosed ecosystem. So this touches on a ton of things. One of them is a problem that I've always had with the original Matrix movie, aside from the heavy-handed co-opting of real world things that are very like resonant to us right now, and then that being a difficult sort of lens to look through now. But when they in the original Matrix movie, when they said that they were using the humans for battery power. Cool story. But to your point, we have that power because we consume other things that benefited from sunlight to produce. So now, you'd have to go really deep into this to probably make it balance out. But in my mind, there still needs to be some ultimate source of heat or energy that generates the algae or the plankton that is turned into the thing that they put into us to keep us alive. So one of the things that I've heard, and I've never been able to verify, is that some of the original ideas behind the Matrix was that the robots weren't just using us to generate energy, but they were sort of creating these massively parallel programming machines using our brains. So they were taking advantage of the fact that our brains are these giant collections of parallel neurons that were processing things, and they were sticking the humans into a made-up place where they would be happy and do everything that they wanted to do there and live their lives however horribly or well they wanted. But on the flip side, a portion of our brains would be used like computer hardware to run giant computations and to run the manufacturing and everything. Because the whole point of a runaway AI, there's this theory of gray goo. If nanites were to become sentient or just run away, that they would convert everything into more nanites, and then the world would just be like this giant ball of sand that's just dead nanites.
It's coarse and irritating.
And it gets everywhere.
I had to, guys.
Yeah, it was a really good moment to do that. But yeah, so I feel like there are a lot of points where the story didn't really get to go as deep as they wanted to, or they sort of rewrote it and focus grouped it for general audiences. And then in the Animatrix, they tried to address a little bit of that. But yes, the dark sky thing has always kind of just been like, is that really the way you would do that? Because I feel like the robots would have more options to produce energy than the humans would. So that really only removes one of our strategic needs, not really one of their strategic needs.
Yeah. I don't think that it's a super great plot mechanism, but what do I know?
But it's, this is sort of the Star Wars problem. It's something that George Lucas
are we equating?
No, no. I think if you were to stack them up next to each other, that's a very dangerous comparison to make. But in terms of things, they share some of the same issues, which is that the creative forces behind Star Wars and the creative forces behind the Matrix sort of had set out these ground rules and probably had a playbook that said, this is the way that happened and you can't change it. You can color around it, but we still have to have darkened the sky with nanites or something like that.
So I guess to me, I just feel like these first two things, while the animation is amazing. Now I have pulled a still or two to show. I have, so this scene here with the female, it was sort of a cyborg, I guess, or a robot who sort of has skin to look human.
I think we're meant to assume that she is a comfort robot.
Yeah, she is, but she's nude from the waist up, and they rip her flesh off and rip her to shreds, but she still has her very large breasts hanging out. To sort of make a point. It's a very stunning image, and I would say it's one of the most stunning images in this part. And but this is sort of the part where for me, I'm just like, yeah, let's just wipe out humanity because we are pretty terrible.
Yeah, this really didn't pull any punches. And the thing that kind of caught me off guard about it was that it was so uneven with the way that it was cutting me as I watched it.
Mm-hmm.
So there would be these scenes that were just, they had a cool beat. It's almost, all of these are almost music videos that you just sort of sink into and just sort of absorb.
They are. I personally do think that this has some of the best art in the whole series. And then there's a great shot of the two representatives from 01 who go to the United Nations to try to join, and they're sort of like dressed up. The male one has like a top hat, and
it was creative.
It's very creative and very cool looking.
And I found myself wondering, like, why are they wearing top hats and lingerie? Like, what was that choice like?
It's a weird.
I'm led to believe that they were standing in a dressing room somewhere as two robots that were just buzzing at each other, like, do I look fat in this? Like, should I wear this to the UN? I don't know.
Yeah.
It was interesting to think of, like, maybe this is an example of how the robots still didn't understand us and just got the read totally wrong on what to wear, or they were trying to seem really strange.
Well, I do think that this is sort of one of those things where you're just starting to kind of get into the head space of, okay, to a machine, an alternate reality is just as real as real reality.
Oh, like, you're jumping ahead just a little bit.
I am, but you start seeing it even in this one, and this is sort of, remember last time when we all got together and we started talking about postmodernism?
Yeah.
The Matrix is like postmodernism at its pinnacle.
Mm-hmm.
It's really sort of an exploration of, like, when you start losing meaning of anything having any reality or meaning or purpose because everything is subjective. When you go too far down that pathway, nothing has any meaning, and you just kind of like want to jump off a building.
It's a path to the dark side.
It is.
It was required reading, and if any of you are kind of new to this, I know that this has been talked about in all the commentaries and everything else, but it was required reading for the crew of the Matrix, and I'm sure to some degree the people who worked on the Animatrix, to read Simulacra and Simulation. It's an old philosophical work that kind of covers, and just a really brief description of what they're going through in this book. And there's entire courses on this kind of thing. But simulacra are copies that depict things that either had no original or that no longer have an original. So they're sort of like giving the appearance of the thing. And then simulation is the imitation of the operation of real world processes or a system over time. That's a really abstract concept, but the idea behind, like, where this book sort of follows through, and I'm going to butcher this because I'm not a philosophy major, is that in our own lives, we interact with simulacra and simulation of things to the extent that we are removed from what is actually really happening. And this goes down that really dark path of like Descartes and stuff like that, where we start to realize that we are processing inputs. Like, one of the major concepts behind the Matrix is that they could substitute the input stream into our brain and we would never know.
Well, it's also the Plato in the Man in the Cave analogy, right? Yeah. Where you've got a fire and you're in a cave and all you see of the world are the reflections on the wall, not the things themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, you could easily be manipulated. But again,
you just hit on exactly what they were struggling through, the Wachowskis, when they wrote this, is that all the things that we see, these are all just symbols that we interpret as a laptop, right? But there may, in fact, not even really be a laptop behind it. So all the symbol really does is prove that the symbol is the truth. The thing behind it may never have even existed.
Yeah, I don't agree with that, but I know,
right? But
I do understand that, because all the way through college. It was just people arguing that.
And how many of your friends in college would wake up and keep you up till 4 a.m. in the morning trying to explain to you that nothing is real, and that it would, not in the sense of like how we've encountered that recently, but in the sense of like that whole existential crisis.
Yeah.
Of are we even in contact with the world around us, or are we just living in some I'm just going to sit here in the corner and rock back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you go, okay, well, if that's true, then what? Then
why do good? Why do bad? Why do anything? You know, it doesn't leave you in a place to operate in a human way.
So I think we've kind of covered the whole Renaissance thing.
Yeah, right. There's only one more note I wanted to give for this one. Okay. I found it interesting to look at the people who worked on these different projects.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And
I didn't do that. So.
And I remember I didn't take the opportunity to back when I first encountered it, but I had seen things like Akira and other anime and stuff, and thought this feels a lot like this. So I just wanted to call out. I'm going to butcher these names because I'm not a native Japanese speaker, but Mahiro Maeda was the director for the first and second Renaissance movies, which I thought had stunning animation and artwork.
Absolutely.
I am a deep appreciator of people who take the time to hand draw, because it's painful and it's almost hard to convince people to do now because of CG. Mm-hmm. And this was right on the cusp of that, right? So he's known for things like developing concept art for Mad Max Fury Road. So just that would be storyboards and paintings of what that was going to look like. If you are familiar with Neon Genesis Evangelion, he developed 2 of the angels for that, which if you've seen that movie, I'm sorry. But at the same time, some of the character design, like for the mecha suits that they wear to fight these sort of alien beings that are maybe more than alien beings, it's really spooky, are some of the most haunting images that I've seen in an animated film, where they just really nailed this disturbing way of depicting what something from another dimension or world would be like. Mm-hmm. And they kind of stick with you. So he's known for 2 of those angels, and he started his early years out at Studio Ghibli, which is a absolute mammoth giant in Japan, and worked on films such as Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind. So if you've seen that, the giant war machine that they wake up at the end, it's influenced by him. There were actually other artists that get credit for the full design of that. Castle in the Sky, which is a very stunning movie, and Porco Rosso, which I've never seen all the way through, but I appreciate that it is a Studio Ghibli movie. So that's cool. My Aaron's director commentary for the moment. End theme.
And see. Okay. Moving along to the next niblet, as I'll call this. It's called Kid's Story. Mm-hmm. This is one of the ones that has characters from the Matrix in it. So Neo is in this one.
It's kind of a 2-sentence story.
It occurs because basically the events of this do occur between the Matrix 1 and 2, the movies. And I know they have different names, but that's what they should be called. So that's what they're going to be called from me. So the kid, whose name is Michael Popper, starts off, he's in a chat room because it's the early aughts, and that's what we did. And he's like, why are my dreams more real than when I'm awake? And it's like, because you're smoking too much marijuana. That's
because you're a teenager, and I know you feel special, but the whole world goes through this at your age.
And Neo responds to him in the chat room, and then he goes to class and he gets a call from Neo on his cell phone. It's kind of like in the Matrix, just like this is where it really feels like fan fiction.
Oh, and everything's lime green, like they really leaned in on.
It's very, the art style is really distinct from the previous ones. It's very sketchy, which I kind of like. I like the look. It kind of has that feel of like the Aha video.
I was about to say, take.
Yeah, it's got that a little bit, but not exactly.
That one was way frenetic.
It does look rotoscoped, but it's also got some style on top of the rotoscope. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of an interesting feel. Agents then start like Neo's like, get out of there, they're coming for you. I don't really know what prompted that. There's not a lot of narration, like understanding.
To be honest, if you really break it down, it's probably because Neo was so hunted for at the time that the agents were watching. Yeah,
so
Neo basically killed this kid.
Yeah, Neo killed this kid. That's what I was going for. So agents then chase him up to the roof, where he then decides he's going to jump off. And so I have to say, when I watched this, like, I thought that he died. Like, and I didn't understand what happens in the story until I read about it on Wikipedia, and it explained to me what actually happened.
I think they were counting on you having really, really enjoyed the Matrix Reloaded and having seen Kid in that movie. And so when this first starts, you realize,
he's in the movie?
Yeah, he's a character.
Don't remember it at all.
He's a character that shows up either in the second or third movie that follows Neo around and thanks him profusely for saving him. And Neo kind of reiterates that you saved yourself, kid, kind of thing. So when I saw this, so this kind of drives me like to the murky past, me thinking that it wasn't hard for me to realize who this was, which means I had to have encountered him somewhere before to go, oh, so we're about to get the backstory for how this kid saved himself.
I had no context for it, so I'm just sitting there going, that's kind of messed up. So this kid jumps off of a roof, and let me show you it's a really weird image that I pulled, but it's really lovely. The art is very cool looking. So this is just an image of him sort of slow motion swan diving off of the roof, which again, these days, not as like it's weird.
We're just a lot more careful with how we talk about things like suicide in entertainment, because there's a lot bad. There's a lot of bad. I will say that I loved the sort of liminal moment where he was just off the roof and they sort of slowed time for you a little bit, and you just have that wind. There's almost this soothing, relaxing quality, and the bird slowly kind of blobs by in bird fashion, and it's just like, oh man, like you just
he kind of has this premonition of it happening, or I guess that's what that was, because you've seen the events before but without context. Like maybe he dreamed it and then it
because
or
in the
Matrix, or
it's a glitch.
I don't know, whatever.
Which means the Matrix would have already technically simulated it.
My brain is melting. So
you are not postmodern.
I'm not. So this is very painful for me.
You're doing great.
I'm trying really hard. So he dies. He has a funeral inside the Matrix. So, but then apparently this was the part that I guess I slept through when I watched it, because I don't remember seeing this at all. But apparently he wakes up with Neo and Trinity, and they say he has achieved self-substantiation, where he basically pulled himself out of the Matrix without any external aid, which was considered impossible, but he's exceptional, you guys. So you can sort of project yourself into him and sort of be like you're in the movie, and you're like, it's kind of like Ray, right?
That's a bad path.
Very much like Ray, where you're like, ooh, she's great at everything. She's friends with Han Solo instantly. That's how I would want to be when I get sucked into the Star Wars universe. So it's kind of like that. And that's why, again, this one feels really like fan fiction, like to the point where I didn't like it at all.
Well, like, were the Wachowskis writing fan fiction of their own work by the end?
I don't know. I'm trying to understand.
I will say this, that unlike Ray, Kid is not a Ray in the Matrix universe. He isn't just good at being outside of the Matrix. He's kind of, I hate to say this, if you're a fan of the character, he's kind of dweeby. Like, he's always following Neo around like a puppy. He won't get it through his head that he did it for himself. So they're acting like it's exceptional that it happened, but I get the real sense that it doesn't. We're going to
be getting to the point where it's not exceptional and it's not unique at all.
Yeah, but you get the feeling that it's like statistically exceptional, but it doesn't really mean anything about the person who does it. It just means something really rare happened to that person, because this kid doesn't come out and then become Neo, because they had that problem. They had their main characters. They had the ones who were carrying the real story arc of the show, so they couldn't generate new famous characters in this, and if they did, they had to die or become sort of neutralized so that they didn't conflict with the film universe of the Matrix.
In my brain, he just died.
And that's what would happen.
It's a better story.
Well, and I worry, and like with modern eyes, I worry about the outcome of watching this if you are in a troubled state.
Well, the last scene does show that apparently, because I have no memory of this place, but the last scene shows the kid's last question on the hacker chat room, because I guess he now logs back in from the other side, right? And he says something, and the answer is, "You are not alone."
I think that's
And
more
it's like,
time play. That happened before the events in the school.
I don't.
They're
like
just
it.
going back and showing you what he would have seen in that moment, or you could even think that he went to bed and just never saw that.
Right. So again, this story, much like many of the others, is like it's so cool that you can't understand it.
It's all style.
It's so stylized that it's just like it kind of, to me, it goes too far in that direction. And then it's one of those things where if you have to ask, you're not cool. And it's like, well, if you were really cool, then you would know how to like make it so I can at least comprehend what you're saying. So
it plays that game.
Follow the story. And it's, again, that's a very postmodern thing that's very of this time. And that's why a lot of movies, to me, as a very logical, order-based person, it's very frustrating for me to try to watch and
Industrial Processes, the movie. Animation moment or director and writer moment for this particular story. Animation was done by Shinji Hashimoto, who is known for being a huge player at Square Enix on the Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy franchises. So these are two very beloved video game franchises.
Gorgeous art.
And he was a big, he was kind of the controlling factor there, the manager of those properties for several years. He also worked on the art direction in Kill Bill Volume 1.
Cool.
Ghost in the Shell 2, which is a gorgeous anime if you've ever seen it. Has a lot of the same concepts that are in a lot of people cite Ghost in the Shell 1 as being an influence. The Wind Rises, which is one of the most lovely movies out of Studio Ghibli. It's not in any way like their normal fantasy sci-fi fare. It's sort of just normal life with this difficult concept of being a airplane designer in Japan during World War II and having that conflict of loving airplanes but not loving war. It's a really interesting sort of soul search by that director. And then Howl's Moving Castle and Spirited Away. So he's got really bona fide pedigrees when it comes to art direction.
The art is gorgeous. Like I really love the art. I don't love the story.
Well, that's good because this is the animation guy. The writer has also got a lot of interesting bona fide, or I say a lot. He's got a couple interesting bona fides to me. Now, there are a lot more properties these people have worked on, but I'm not super deep in the scene. So I just picked the ones that I remembered and that resonated with me.
Yeah, basic.
I am a little bit basic. You've been waiting a long time to say that, haven't we?
I feel really proud of myself.
You did. You nailed that one because it hurt. Like I felt it like.
Good.
Cowboy Bebop, which was huge in the late 90s and early aughts.
It's really good.
It was directed and written by Shinichiro Watanabe. So please scream the correction at me. I promise I'll hear it. He wrote that Cowboy Bebop show, which I have watched most of and just really enjoyed it from a sense of like, this really is great. Not what I thought animation could be like.
Also very postmodern, but a little more palatable, at least for me.
Yeah, and the main character is kind of super adorable. Like you just love that guy. He's neat.
I do.
And then he co-directed Macross Plus, which was in the Macross universe. So
is that like Disney Plus?
Yeah, it's the streaming Minmay music channel.
No.
If you were leaving life after
I wish that's what she was saying.
After SG1.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one because we got a lot to go through. Program is the next one. So Program is, I will say, this is probably it's one of my two least favorite ones of these. Really, really don't like it. Sorry to anyone who does or any of the people who made it. It's just me.
I guarantee you that Yutaka Minoa and Yoshiaki
are not
Kawajiri don't care what you think.
They don't care what I think.
They may watch,
they shouldn't.
But they won't care what
they shouldn't. But it's just my opinion. You free to have yours. Two warriors in this one are battling in a training simulation that is a samurai training simulation, which I'm going to point out now shows that there are other simulations besides the one dojo room that we saw in the Matrix where Keanu Reeves and Morpheus are like doing the dumb fight scene thing.
Which was awesome.
Which was awesome in the movie, but we're getting to something later. But my point is this shows that they can just kind of do anything as a
This is
training
true.
simulation, and it's interesting.
They have their own local Matrix. So the
That's right.
Matrix
So
is the robot
got it.
control one.
Got
Let
it.
me just go down that path. We're in a hallway at DragonCon, and I'm just going to stop right now.
So the lead character in this is named Sis, which is an unfortunate name nowadays. I don't know if that was a word that was used for what it's used for.
Remember,
now.
these are written, this was written by someone who does not speak English as their first language. So
okay, so it's just interesting with all things considered about all the things. Her name is Sis. Feudal Japan training simulation. She's joined by a dude that's like a samurai looking guy who's named Duo. They fight, but they're friends. They're like kind of sparring, you know. And then Duo asks her if she regrets taking the red pill that took them out of the peaceful life of the virtual world. And this is where really hard this starts feeling like QAnon propaganda. It's again modern lens on looking at something that didn't have this meaning when you watch it, but it's very hard to watch it without.
I think it's because so much of this, like you were explaining a little bit to me, and you sent me a couple articles, but they've co-opted so much.
Well, they have appropriated
language.
A ton of the words and language and imagery of the Matrix. It's in the whole concept of whatever you were talking. There's a whole documentary, by the way, that's called something about a glitch in the Matrix is what it's called. And it's about people who really truly believe that none of us are real and that we're all programs and this whole thing. And it's like, well, I mean, feel free to go down that pathway, but
have fun with that infinite regression, right? Because it will destroy you.
It's but so it's hard to watch because it's just so Duo says he's blocked the signal so that the operator can't hear them. And instead of, she thinks he's going to propose.
Yeah, she says, you're going to propose to me?
And he says no, that he wants to return to the Matrix, which again is just kind of the plot of the movie.
Yeah.
My memory of the movie, right? Because the one guy
is a subplot.
Like, he's
Joey Pants.
Right.
His character does that,
and he wants her to join him, but she's like, nah. And he's like, and they end up just like fighting it out on a roof.
And it goes Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
It's just very overly, and I'm not a big fan of the animation style. Let me show you what it looks like.
It's very bright.
It looks like the 80s wall art. That's,
yes,
you know what I'm talking
about.
The
makeup example posters that every girl had.
Black and white, but then with a little bright color on it.
Yes.
It's everything in this is extremely washed out because it's the aughts. And, you know, it's like, God, I miss like richer, like turn up the saturation a little bit, but it's very desaturated and very, even though there's red in there, it's very weirdly muted, almost like modern superhero movies. So when you see Superman and Wonder Woman, it's red and blue, but it's like
monochrome,
dirty, ugly red and blue that makes you feel sad somehow. And so he says the machines are coming and you can't call for help, and no one can help you. And then she kills him. And then she wakes up and it was all just a dream. It was all a dream. It was like, who shot JR?
It was another one of those tests.
And it's a test. And so then this guy, Kaiser, tells her that she acted appropriately. And then she punches him and she walks away. And I'm just like, it was just a dream thing. That's like what we're doing.
I felt that was coming because, but I was wondering when they were going to pull back.
My time on this, like it's such a waste of time. It's like a mirror universe episode. No, I don't like it.
I know.
I was very angry about everything about it. Can you tell?
I feel like Riker should have just walked in and been a jerk for some reason. But going into this one, I had the feeling early on that this was a test, right? The only question
test of the audience's patience.
Definitely. But
switch it off.
When were they going to pull back the curtain and reveal that it was a test? They played a lot of brinksmanship with that, where you kind of go back, and if you are following it and not just the whole time,
I was trying really hard.
You go back and oh no, I've got some reasons why the film language in it probably grated on you, and I'm going to name a couple of things that the artist worked on that I think we've talked about just over coffee upstairs before. But they really do a good job of making you go back and forth on this of like, is this real? Is this a test? And then
it's not real. We already know it's not real.
Then they seem to go all in on this being legit, that he really is trying to pull her out of the Matrix. So there's a party that's like, that was messed up. Because what if she had cracked just to survive? Like, it was a super hard test. So when she gets out of the whole thing and he's like, oh yeah, you showed great judgment. You know, I feel like I think about evaluations I've had in my life, and it's like, you had good judgment, reaction time, and power. Good job. You know, and then she knocks him out and says she feels better. And then the parting line just really irritated me, where they were like, she did really great on that until then. And I was like, no, she should have hit him in the throat. Like, that was messed up what they just did.
I guess for me,
like, how did she not see that coming? Didn't they do that to other people?
I don't know. I guess I just feel like I don't know anything about her, so I don't really care about her.
That's true. And that's
we're not given enough time to really feel anything for her. It's just, it jumps in, she's fighting in these crazy over the top things. You're like literally right in the middle of this weird art that's sort of keeping you at arm's length, and then also she's fighting all these people which you don't care, and you're just like, and then this happens, and then it's all a dream, and you just feel like the movie has just literally smacked you.
It's like a hologram episode of Star Trek that's also a mirror universe episode of Star Trek, because it's like they're two friends, like you see in DS9, just going to pretend they're in the Battle of Britain, right? And then somewhere in the middle of that, there's a big like ethics question that comes up, and then how the other person reacts is whether they're going to kill them in real life or whether they're going to keep being a part of the crew.
Yeah, and like, that's the like actual idea. Maru thing of like,
yes,
it's
but
not
you don't
really
know
a thing.
You're in a simulation. Yeah, exactly. So the character design for this was Yutaka Minoa, who is known for Ninja Scroll, which is a very famous anime that would be really interesting to get your take on that if you were to watch it. Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, which is, if Tim is watching, knows that while that is a really interesting sort of vampire story, it's got some issues too. And then prop design on Blade for the character design. So a very strong character designer, but has worked on a lot of really kind of edgy productions. And then Yoshiaki Kawajiri also worked on Ninja Scroll and Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. So if you've seen either of those other two things, seeing this, that language will immediately resonate with you. And I do think that for a lot of these, that was the point, was for these directors to get an introduction to the States. Vampire Hunter D was already popular here in certain circles, but Ninja Scroll was also one of those that was kind of passed around in college and things like that. So that's your director-writer moment from Aaron. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're listening to Second Cup on NPR.
World Record is the next niblet. I like that. Niblet. This is about a marathon sprinter, champion sprinter who manages to break free of the Matrix by sheer physical effort. So basically the same idea as the kid thing. He pulls himself out of the Matrix. So, you know, if you take it by a ratio, you go, okay, 2 out of these 9 short stories have people who manage to just pull themselves in some way or another out of the Matrix. So it's that the odds on that, it doesn't make it as rare and unique as you would like it to be.
I think it's more often that what happens in this story is what happens to the person, that
it's what would happen.
They start to wake up and the machines are just right there ready to like, well,
we don't really understand why that doesn't happen to the kid.
Yeah.
Because like, wouldn't he have also woken up in a, I mean, I guess
he did. That's behind, you just missed that part. So he kind of pulled a Neo where he woke up in the tube. And what I'm guessing, again, these little niblets are only loosely tied to each other. So they cross each other in different places. But, you know, I would have to guess that when Neo realized what he had done, because let's be fair, him reaching out to someone who's in the Matrix and kind of doing it that way probably drew the attention of all the agents to the kid and very nearly killed him in real life. But I would say that he and the Nebuchadnezzar would have raced to the pod, like identified where he was and been standing by. And you could even read into that they had to fight to keep him alive, like to keep the machines from locking him back down. But again, that's all implied. If it's even implied, it's just something that would have had to happen. Because think about it, if he had been dumped by the tube into that giant lake of goo, dude would have just died. I mean, that probably happens all the time where the Matrix just ejects people. And why doesn't the Matrix...
It could happen to you right now.
This is where the Matrix completely breaks. So let's just break the Matrix today.
It's already been broken a lot, but...
We're just going to crush it now. Why even send agents in to repress people who are getting close to discovering the truth? when they have this sort of infinite supply of humans, why don't they just eject them from the pod into the mess, like instantly? Like they just poop, there they go. They poop out the person. They die in the real world.
That's right.
And then they don't have any of this opportunity for Neo and Trinity to even occur. Like they could just watch the data stream, detect the problem, and nuke them from afar. Matrix broken. I mean,
thanks a lot, Aaron.
Let's just go get a burrito.
Ooh. So there's a lot more QAnon stuff here. It's kind of gross.
Yeah.
It says only exceptional humans tend to become aware of the Matrix.
Was this when you messaged me?
Those who have a rare degree of intuition, sensitivity, and a questioning nature, all qualities which are used to identify inconsistencies in the Matrix. This is not without exceptions, given that some attain this wisdom through wholly different means. So it's this, I'm extra exceptional because I believe this is the truth. And in the mythology of this movie, which
you're extra exceptional because you detected the
that's
truth.
right.
Not because you believe
because
it.
because you think there might be a conspiracy theory, that means you're exceptional. So
Yes.
therefore I want to believe that. Fox Mulder style, I want to believe that I'm exceptional and I want to believe this thing.
Sort of selection bias.
It's just a weird, like, circular reasoning type of thing.
Yeah.
And it's when you hear it through a modern lens, you're just kind of like,
ooh, there's lots of culty things that use that kind of language.
And it's honestly why the X-Files is a little hard to watch now for the same reason. But
it's not the Fox Mulder in general.
No, it's weird. So the story of this one is that Dan Davis is a track athlete. He's in the Summer Olympics. He lost a prior gold medal due to some drug use, I guess Lance Armstrong style. And
this is before all that was
I know,
mainstream.
but that's what it's like. So he's set to compete again. He wants to try to prove them wrong, that he can do it without the drugs and still be really fast and awesome. And so for some unknown reason, there are all these agents watching him. I don't know why they would all be watching him. But due to the extreme energy he's using when he's running, he's literally bursting his muscles out of his legs, and his signal becomes unstable. And so the agents jump in immediately and possess all the runners near him to try to catch him. I don't know what they think. I guess they're going to stop him from running, which will stop him from destabilizing, but they can't catch him. And so the energy that he exerts ends up unplugging him from the Matrix. And so he wakes up in a pod, and this sentinel secures him and immediately puts him right back in the Matrix. So he does still win the race. Then for some reason, I guess they sort of do this brainwashy thing that they do. They change your reality, mind warp it, whatever. And he's shown in a wheelchair in a hospital, and he's got all these like metal things on his legs, I guess, from where he messed himself up. And this agent who's in there says that his memory is erased. He's not saying it to him, he's saying it to somebody else. His memory's erased, he'll never walk again. But at that point, he stands up and breaks the thing. So again, he's super exceptional, right? He's going to overcome this system that's being oppressive over him, and takes a few steps and then falls. And
some of my favorite voice acting in this happens right there.
I don't understand, like, again, I'm trying to find, like, what is the meaning of this, but
a lot of these are going to have a component that's just showcasing animation. So the animation in this was annoying and interesting at the same time. There's a scene where his coach is basically like, you're going to ruin yourself if you do this. If you do it without me. And he won't stop Emineming at him. Like, it's just...
Is that why you were doing that?
Yeah, it's so bizarre because everything he says is like, it's just imagine if you're talking to somebody and you're just doing this the whole time. Like, hey, do you want to get some breakfast later today? Because, yeah, man, we're going to have some breakfast, you know? And you're just like, could you just maybe lay off the caffeine or whatever is causing this sort of behavior out of you?
Can you start doing that?
I'll lose weight, man, because... that's a lot of energy.
It's arm day.
Oh man, if I use too much energy, then an agent will try to stop me.
Uh-oh.
And I'll end up being pushed down the hallway by a very strange looking nurse who won't stop talking about apple pie for some reason. But the reason I said some of my favorite voice acting is in this moment is right when he starts to get out of that chair. The agent who's on the phone just kind of like, yeah, I get 6 of them, you know, whatever. No, I like the ones at Target better. You know, I don't know what they're doing, just mumbling in the background. But when he starts to get up, that agent pulls a very classic Agent Smith, where he very distinctly says, sit down. And the way he growled that was like, if I was a voice director, would have been like, I would have been like, give that guy an award. That was just absolutely nailed the way that, and I know that's just 2 words, but the mixing and the delivery on it was just so, I couldn't have asked somebody to do that better. It's a weird thing to get excited about. Aaron's weird excitement of the moment. But I did.
Well, I mean,
like
I'm
that.
glad somebody enjoyed some part of it, because I didn't like this one.
And all the things you brought up about modern issues with QAnon, I'm not inculcated in that. So I just still don't see the Matrix through that lens. But when I hear you describe the way that works, I'm like, oh my gosh, this has to be distracting to a lot of people if they just encounter the Matrix now, having encountered all of that beforehand.
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be QAnon. It's anyone who is really, if you've ever known anyone who's really into conspiracy theories, like I dated a guy in high school who then got really into conspiracy theories of all sorts. This was in the 90s. You know, all the Masons are controlling the world.
Yeah.
And this was before the Dan Brown books came out. So before Da Vinci Code, he was like, all that stuff is stuff that the, you know, conspiracy nuts all believed. And so, you know, it's sort of that the government is this all powerful, there's a secret government and there's this, all this stuff, and it's on the money and they're controlling us and da-da-da. And you're just like, it starts to just, talking to someone like that is exhausting. And so that's kind of what it feels like. It feels
just like whoa,
what you want. Okay.
Very aggressive help. Don't have a lot of notes on the director for this one. The writer was the same as for the previous. So I think a lot of the art style is just like another very similar look to the previous one. I do feel like this is a lot stronger than Program as a vignette goes. But it is not one of it's not in my top 2.
Yeah, no. So the very next one is called Beyond. And this story, oh wait, did I show I didn't show, hang on, let me show really quickly before we move on. This is the animation style of
it's actually really good for this one.
The world record. It's really interesting. I'm going to say
Same washed out issue.
It's very, yeah, I don't love that. But in terms of just the lines and it's very cool, very unique. I don't have anything negative to say about that. So I don't really have anything negative to say about any of the animation in this thing. It's actually all very cool. And
the animation director was Takeshi Koike for that one. These names are interesting, and a lot of them resonate very loudly in the Japanese animation and Korean animation worlds.
So in Beyond, this is the style I'm going to go ahead and show. The girl, this is a girl who is a terrible, terrible cat guardian, the worst cat guardian of any human. Maybe not any, but she's really bad. She sucks. And
so how is she a guarding cat?
The story is that she goes wandering off after her cat, and then nothing happens.
Would it surprise you to find out this is probably my favorite vignette on this whole installation?
It is infuriating to me. So this girl is like on the phone. She realizes her cat has gotten out because she left the window open because whatever. And it's like, fine, well, if you let your cat in and out, then the cat's going to run out. I don't understand.
And you're in a mega Tokyo
She's like
city.
Downtown in a city. So it's like, I mean, if the cat goes outside, then the cat's just outside. I don't know. She's freaking out like the cat doesn't normally go out. So it's very weird. She goes wandering after the cat. This little boy says she's in this haunted house that's over there. So she goes, it's full of Matrix glitches. We've all seen that before. All these kids are like playing with them because it's like you can fall, but then you don't hit the ground and you just hover there. And it's really cool. And so they're all like hanging out there doing all this weird stuff. And it's just like, if you did acid, then this is kind of what it would look like. It's just people kind of like, look at my hand, man.
So what we're hearing is this is really just a flop house.
It's so cool, man. Look at when they move it. It's like, whoa. It's all slow motion and trippy and acidy, and like, look at the colors. I will say the colors are nice for a change.
Yeah. Thanks.
And so then she finds her cat several times and loses the cat again, as the cat wanted, because she's like, ooh, I'm tripping balls. And all these other kids are tripping balls. They're not really tripping, but they seem like they're tripping, and they're doing all this stuff. And then, of course, agents figure out that there's glitches going on, And so they all arrive and clear everything out. And like right at that moment, the cat has gone to this door and is scratching, and she opens the door and looks in, and it's just vast blackness. I don't know what that's supposed to be. The thing never explains what that's supposed to be. The agents come in and take her. Suddenly the cat disappears. So there's no more cat. Like, so from the moment they apprehend her, she's initially holding the cat, but when they cut to them walking her outside, the cat is no longer in her arms. Don't know where. I'm just like, where's the cat? What happened to the cat? They never show the cat again. Don't know what happens to the cat. That was the whole point of the thing, right? Was she was following the cat. So the agents take everybody out. They wipe everyone's memory-ish. Okay, so they seem like they kind of remember, but they don't really remember. And then she goes back the next day and she's just staring there. So did they wipe the cat out of the memory? Are cats still in existence? Do they live in like little pods somewhere, and are they being used? Like, or are they just completely AI constructs? I don't like it. It's the next day, it's just a parking lot, and she's just standing there and she cuts her finger, and it's very like, I don't know. You explain it to me, please.
No. You don't deserve it. No, one of the things that immediately pulled me into this was the crowded, the musical tones that the crosswalk plays. This is all about little moments for me. Which is kind of one of the things we hate about modern cinema, because they seem to have taken that to these extremes where like movie's amazing because it has an amazing moment in it that we get to experience together.
With hot dogs in it.
That was lovely. That was a lovely scene. That was a great scene.
It was really long.
Yeah, she saved it right out of the air too. I thought he was just going to eat it, but he stuck it in his pocket. Which, I mean, come on, who puts a hot dog in their pocket? That is the weirdest thing you could possibly go on an elevator next week or next time you're allowed to be on an elevator with people, and then just have a hot dog and then nonchalantly just stick it in your jacket pocket in front of everyone that you work with or who's on the hotel elevator with you, and just notice how much more popular you'll be in life. Like, it's just a life hack from me to you, free of charge.
Thanks, Aaron.
Just for you.
Great life hacks from Aaron.
But I have spent, and many of you might have as well, many boring afternoons in an urban setting. And one of the things that I think this animation really excels at is expressing that sense of just ennui, that unbearable heat, that unbearable sunlight just constantly shining down on the concrete. You hear the little crosswalk things, like letting people know that they can cross and that they can't. She's having a super mundane conversation on the phone. This is so urban burbs that it just crushes me to see it, because she's just dealing with mundane stuff that I don't care about. And then she can't find her cat, so she's wandering around and she finds this sort of it is just this rundown place that everybody refers to as haunted. So this sort of starts to delve into what I was talking about earlier, where I was fascinated by how can you use the Matrix to explain phenomena that people have already been claiming happen in the world, like the idea of a haunted house. Now, this doesn't really go.
But it wasn't a house; it was a big industrial warehouse.
Sure, which has house on the end of the name. That was weak. I know it was weak. But you walked right into that. I mean, it's in the name. It's in the set. And so I kind of enjoyed that sort of, it felt like they just had a little focus group where they were like, what are some weird things that could happen here? And then they played with those a little bit. I liked the idea that there was just this place where these kids and people had figured out that stuff wasn't working right, and they were just experimenting with it. I like the idea that could be something that happens in this space. I can't explain to you what was going on with that hallway. I want to say that she looked out of the fabric, because if you've ever been playing a video game and somehow clipped through the boundaries of the scenery, you will see that it's just an empty void on the outside. It's usually gray, but it's just, there's literally nothing out there. And even looking at the world you were just in from the other side, there's no texture there. So you don't even see the world you just came from. You're just in a void. So I get the feeling that she kind of opened a door and it just wasn't being rendered, because that wasn't a place that existed in the database of things that were in the world. Your issues with her and the cat are irritating, like to watch, because she just seems to not have any concepts between action and consequence when it comes to raising a pet. So if you leave your window open and let your cat go hunt in the city, then you have to deal with the consequences of your cat either getting taken up by a new family, getting hurt, or just not coming home for some reason. So, but that is the motivation they use to get her
but
to
then
put
the cat just
pants on
disappears
and go outside.
So if you're going to use that, right? Then at the end, shouldn't they have like continued at least to have her holding the cat when the guy is ushering her out?
I think if it was a real world story, yes. But since this is the world of the Matrix where things are supposed to be a little bit unsettling, the idea, and I never really thought about that aspect of it, but
that is all I care about in this whole movie.
That these fake, exterminators at the end who came in to delete things and memories could very easily have deleted the cat when they reconfigured, because the whole idea behind that is somebody over at a computer typed at some agent, reconfigured the space, and it just turned into something else. That cat may have just been dropped from the database table. And so that means that every linked record in her mind and everyone else's would have been edited. So she may not even remember she ever had a cat.
Which would have been interesting had that actually been in the story, but we're putting that on the story.
Yes, I would love to give them credit for that.
The thread, and that's the part that pisses me off, because it's like, if you're going to have this as a thing, then do something with it. But they don't really do anything with it. It's just sort of like, look at this cool, druggy, trippy animation. It's about to get worse too.
Yes.
Like,
so what if that was meant to be a play at making you feel like they had also deleted the cat from the memory of the directors and the Matrix is real?
It didn't work. It didn't work.
Okay, so the director on this,
for me, sorry,
and the writer was Koji Miyamoto, who is famous for Akira, which is a very lovely anime, and Kiki's Delivery Service, which is a very strange two credits to have side by side, Kiki's Delivery Service and Akira. But it kind of makes sense when you look at the picture we just showed you of just the sort of the aesthetic of the girl herself and the bird, as well as when you think in terms of Akira, which was a very violent and kind of utilitarian show, but very lovely to look at.
The two-toned hair, which I think is supposed to be shadow hair underneath, like shadow.
Like split tone.
But it looks like two-tone, which is a trend they have now, where they like literally dye underneath your hair one color and then the top of your hair a different color.
I should do that.
That's how this whole thing, yeah, you should.
I'd have to bleach it first underneath.
So are we clear to move on to this next thing?
Yeah.
A detective story?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Which
what?
What are you sorry about?
About holding us up on the previous one. Oh, okay.
Nope. I'm just making sure you didn't have anything else.
No.
Okay.
I mean, it does appear that I have a lot, but I don't.
So this is about a private investigator who tracks Trinity through the looking glass, but I don't really know what that means. He doesn't actually leave the Matrix or anything. He starts using Alice in Wonderland type words to. So Ash is this PI, and he gets this anonymous call that they want him to search for Trinity. And once he starts looking into it, he sees that a bunch of other PIs and people have tried and failed, meaning they've killed themselves, or they've gone missing, or they've gone insane, which sounds like a great reason to just keep doing it. But so he does it, and he notices phrases like through the looking glass. So he starts using some Alice in Wonderland style words to communicate with her. And then so she's like, cool, you speak that, again, it's that you're in the know, you're cooler than everybody else. So, which is kind of in the original movie, like Neo was just cooler than everybody else. And that's why he gets
he's Keanu Reeves, and that's not fair.
So she sets up a meeting with him on this train, and they meet, and she removes this bug from his eye, and which he thought was a dream of him going to the optometrist, but it was real, which is typical in the Matrix. And then 3 agents show up and try to capture her, and they have
literally just use mocap from the movie for how they draw their guns.
Lots of shooting. I wrote lots of shooting.
Yeah.
And
bulletproof train walls.
An agent takes over Ash to try to get to Trinity because they're near each other, which forces her to shoot him and wound him. And they say goodbye. Friendly, like it's friendly, and she's like, I think you could have handled the truth, and then she jumps out a window, and then the agents come up to him, and he's pointing a gun at them while he's lighting his cigarette because he's so cool and so like noir, and
he's Cowboy Bebop.
He's clearly going to die. Yeah, but it doesn't have the cool tone.
It's the same guy.
It doesn't feel like it though, and he's clearly gonna die, and then the lighter flame goes out as he says, a case to end all cases.
Oh, it was so heavy-handed.
So
I just needed Fiend to come up like it was a student film.
Look at the dark grittiness of it.
They leaned way hard into the noir on this.
But it's also got that like that Matrix clothing style, which is just repulsive now, but
I mean, it is hard. It's hard to deal with.
It's the shiny
leather,
shiny
halter tops,
leather
PVC clothing.
Unfortunate.
And it was everywhere.
I mean, what was funny about it when the Matrix came out is that goths had been doing that in the 90s for a while. Like it was a little past its prime when it started being trendy. It's weird.
Yeah.
So this was where I actually did fall asleep, and I had to watch this like 3 times.
It's not a very long one.
It felt like 40 years long. It was really.
Ooh, that's rough. I'm glad you made it through.
It was hard. I just finally turned the TV off and I was like, passed out on the couch on this one, and I was like, I gotta get back to this. I gotta get through this thing. How many more of these are there?
We're near the end.
I mean, no, but that's what I was thinking when I was watching it.
Yeah. The animation for this one was done by Kazuto Nakazawa.
What did you think of the animation on this?
I enjoyed it for what it was. It was just really like.
Where would you rank this one in these?
It's only the Beyond is ranked as kind of my favorite vignette on the whole set of vignettes, but I still consider the 1 and 2 part.
I like that.
I feel like that one's the most important thing on the set. Like I feel like if nothing else had been done, that would have served its purpose of just creating some lore and making some space before the Matrix happened. And even to this day, when I watch it, different things hit me weird. Like the scene that you capped hit me, when I first saw it, as just being very uncomfortable to watch and very telling. And then you go watch something like, I know we're jumping back, but then you go watch something like Ex Machina, which is sort of a continuation of, if we created robots, androids that were there to serve our every need, and then you have this sort of hedonistic person who controls them, what would that turn into in isolation? And it's like a very disturbing look at that world of like this super wealthy guy who creates this technology and then has basically love slaves and house workers around his house that are just these women that he finds aesthetically pleasing, and he has complete and utter control over them. And then you start to notice, like as you get into that world, you sort of slowly and then quickly get introduced into just how messed up he is and how everything there is just disturbing. So I feel like there's weird tie-ins where this has gone into other people's brains and then fruited in other movies and other films.
So I would say that, this one is just sort of not a lot. I mean, it's like a PI is trying to find Trinity and he succeeds and then fails. So he dies. Like a lot of these just end with, and they die.
The stories can't impact the main storyline. So it's like they have their wings clipped to a degree. That doesn't mean it couldn't have been more interesting. This was aesthetically interesting from the steampunk side of things. It was weird to watch him use the weird typewriter keyboards and computer. It's like everything is like Fallout. It's stuck in the 50s. Like we progressed to the point where we have AIs and robots, but all the technology we use still feels like something from the 40s. Like, oh, get on the teletype and send a message to Tokyo. What were you saying? I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I'm just so we've got, technically, if I'm going to try to end on time, we've got 5 minutes to get through the last 2. So I'm going to try to like go through them quickly. Matriculated. I've got 3 bullet points as to what happens in this one. So let's show the image of this trippy thing. So a group of humans capture a machine scout. They put it, their goal is to put it inside of a human matrix. So they're basically going to turn the tables and do to the machines what the machines have done to humans, and make the machines think that this other reality is the real reality. So it's this whole idea of turnabout is fair play. And so they do this inside out exploration of machine psyches, which is very like navel gazing, going down this, it's going up its own ass, in my opinion. A lot of these.
This was hard for me to get through every single time.
Humans apparently claim that this exercise exists because they want to give the machines a choice. This is a big deal in this one, is that the machines need to make the choice which is the choice that the machines are currently denying most humans, which is, I want to go into this reality. I get to choose my reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a choice that the machine makes, and then the machine makes it, but then kind of turns it. So like the machine kind of weirdly falls in love with the female character, which I can't remember her name. It doesn't matter. I don't even know if they say it. She's like in this little team of humans that look like they're on this island. And
Alexa.
They're
sorry, everyone.
Alexa.
No, let's not go to that. Sorry.
And so they sort of, I don't know how they're doing it. I guess they build a little Matrix hub inside of the computer.
I think they had one on the Nebuchadnezzar. They build them wherever they need them.
They put the machine inside of it and trick the machine into thinking that it's reality, and it sort of falls in love with her or something.
This is a liquid acid trip.
This is a liquid acid trip of... Is this the one that it feels like it's trying to be Aeon Flux?
It's by the same person. It's literally written and directed by the...
Well, that would be why
that's then. Peter Chung, who has a lot of interesting credits, including Chronicles of Riddick, Dark Fury.
The art's pretty.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, 1987. Cops, worked on that cartoon. Co-designed Rugrats, did Transformers the movie, and Transformers the TV series, and there's a million more. So this person
and many more.
Peter Chung has been a part of our childhoods forever, including my late childhood with Aeon Flux being on TV when I was like, that's an interesting screen to look at. I don't want to watch this show because it's boring to me. And so seeing this, I was like,
how I feel about this bit.
I don't care.
This niblet.
Yeah.
I just...
Matriculated.
It's very highly regarded. When I read about it on the internet, a lot of people really love it because it allows you to go down all these thought rabbit holes for people who enjoy thinking about this type of stuff, which you can clearly tell that I am not one of them. But
each of the things they do to the robot is probably tied to a real psychological process that they were trying to accomplish.
If you're really into thinking about how machines perceive the world and AI and psychology and all of those kinds of things, then this might be really interesting to you. And
I think about AI a lot. I don't really think about those things. So that's an interesting...
Yeah, I mean, it is, because you do seem like someone who is way more into this kind of stuff than I am. But I think there are probably a lot of people that this really would resonate with. And I mean, I think it's a strong entry. I just don't... It's not interesting to me.
Fair enough.
But it's not... Anyway.
Matriculated, everyone.
Matriculated.
A pretentious name.
So the very last one is called The Final Flight of the Osiris, which again, this on the DVDs when you got them back in the day would have been the first thing. And I feel like that might have worked against it, because to me, I
almost gave up on it.
This is a CGI, and this was in 2003. So CGI wasn't great at this point. I think at the time it was probably like, whoa.
It was extremely advanced at the time.
It was, but now it looks like base level video game type stuff. So here's an example of kind of what it looks like. There's this whole really like cringy scene at the beginning. This is another one where nothing happens. Most of these are kind of like very little happens.
It's like a boring day in the Matrix movie, honestly.
Kind of. But so this one is... again, ripping off whole concepts straight out of the Matrix films, but the crew of this hovercraft, the Osiris, there are these two people, Thaddeus and Jew, who are these two characters here, and they're having some foreplay in a training room. It's the same basic training room that Neo and Morpheus use, so I guess that maybe is the freeware that comes with the program.
It's the default out of the box.
It's the default out of the box.
Give me the out of the box personal Matrix, please. Has it got the dojo? All of them have the dojo.
It's like where you start before you build out your whole like samurai training thing where you get to fight like in feudal Japan. So anyway, they're trying to warn. So they're in this training room and they keep like they slice a shirt sleeve here and their whole top falls off.
Yeah, I know.
And then like
a
little slice right here, and oh, my pants fell off. Oh my goodness! Like they're not saying that, but it's
going through your head.
They're both blindfolded for some reason, I guess, because that was in the Matrix, and it's just like wink nod. Hey, remember the Matrix? That was awesome. And so they're doing this whole thing, and the ship gets swarmed for some reason by sentinels, and so they have to come out of their foreplay because they're about to they're peeking. They're like, ooh, it's titillating. And
it was painful.
It's super
and uncomfortable.
cringy. It feels like you're watching like weird CGI attempts at almost porn, like in the early aughts, and it's so bad.
Can we just not do this in my Matrix movie?
They start running from the sentinels. They come out of that thing and they're in the ship just like in the movies, and they come out of this big tunnel, almost like in the Goonies, almost like a water tunnel.
Up there, it's their time.
Yeah, and it's like this huge thing, and it's like right above Zion, right? And which we see in one of the later movies.
Yes.
And they're drilling down. The Sentinels have this huge giant drill, so they're like fracking, and they're trying to get down to Zion, and they're like,
that's so AI.
Oh no, we've got to warn them. And so they're running again from there because they're literally swarmed with these sentinels that are climbing all over them, and they fly off, and the girl Jew is like, I will go in to the Matrix and warn them. But they all kind of, without saying it, I assume they all know they're going to die.
Oh yeah.
So
because again, they can't introduce main characters that would interrupt the main characters of Trinity and Neo and Morpheus.
Right. So she goes into this Matrix world, and she jumps. I think she jumps off of a building.
Then we have to watch this parkour.
It's very parkour. I don't understand. I don't even remember it very well, but I know basically she goes in and she mails a letter. Like she has a letter and she sticks it in the mailbox, and there's an old lady standing there, and you're like, is that an agent? But it's not. It's just an old lady. And she's like, she goes, well, I hope the mail gets there. Yeah, you never know. And then she dies because she dies. The Sentinels swarm the ship, and that kills everyone.
And then she just sort of
and then
unplugs.
She just falls over, and the phone is laying there, and and she dies, and they all die. Scene. And I'm like, well, so she mailed the letter, but in the Matrix, that's going to take what, 2 or 3 days to get to them? Does time still work if it's in a machine?
But it happens at a different speed. The simulation could have different time
So I don't
scales.
understand that, and they don't explain that, so I don't know what to think about that, and so I don't know what any of it does. Does it matter? Nothing matters. So
no.
And nothing else matters.
This movie, I can't take it.
So I don't really know. Like, I feel like that is a very
there's not a lot of dissecting to do here.
Anticlimactic entry in this series of shorts, and I feel like it's wisest to move it to the end. I feel like I can't imagine this being the first thing you see.
And it was when I cracked open that DVD.
I feel like I would have shut it off like within the first minute.
I think I skipped it.
Whereas in the Renaissance ones, those are interesting. Like those I would have stuck with all, and I did. I enjoyed them. Those two, I feel like those two, maybe Matriculated, even though it's annoying just because it is the artwork in it. I didn't show you a lot of it, but it's pretty trippy and intense.
Did they hand draw it? Some of it looks very hand drawn and almost like old Disney, like the way that it was liquidy across the screen. So I do have the director and writer information for Final Flight, which is interesting for one reason. Really, Andrew R. Jones was the director for this one, and it will make a little bit of sense to you because he's famous for a lot of things that are very Disney. So he recently did The Lion King in 2019, heavily animated film. So you can see that this is the progression from this to what is happening now, and it's improved quite a bit. The Jungle Book, he did effects for World War Z, which I really enjoyed the sort of the fast zombie aspect of that. They managed to make them kind of scary.
Yeah.
Avatar, he was an animator in Avatar. He was an animator in iRobot. So, solid films that people love, but still
Isn't that an actual product?
iRobot. Yeah, it's a Roomba. Makes an iRobot vacuum cleaner. And then this one really stood out to me, which is Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. So if you were looking at this and looking at Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within, you can see a lot of similarity in the facial structure and design for the characters. It really feels like these are two things cut from the same build of the software that built each one of these. And Final Fantasy: Spirits Within is a very strange entry into the Final Fantasy universe. It's almost completely unrelated from the games that we play, but it's just very heavy on the idea of Gaia and the spirit of the earth and what happens to it when we destroy it, and a kind of a battle between humanity and the earth's soul in a lot of ways. And then initially, the earliest credit I found in him, which I know there have to be more, is Titanic. So he would have done effects on Titanic. So he's very James Cameron heavy.
I was about to say he's
very,
BFF with James Cameron.
Yep.
Which we have to watch some James Cameron possibly soon.
The Abyss.
For a future podcast that we're doing called The Abyss.
Yes. And this one was written by Lana and Lily Wachowski. So that is very evident from the storyline.
Yeah, I think so. Didn't they write 4 of these?
They were a part of writing, several of them.
I would assume the Renaissance one.
This is the one that they get direct.
They do. Okay.
They get direct writing credit for, and I think they were sort of working in and leaning in on the others a lot more than some of the others. The only other note I don't want to leave without saying is that the influences for this movie are very varied, but as you pointed out, the storyline of The Matrix is a little thin at points, so everything's just sort of loosely, like you feel like it inspired it, but didn't necessarily take a lot. One of my favorite books that I've talked about before is Neuromancer, and they even in the commentary reference Neuromancer as being an important book that led up to this. Neuromancer is an early instance of the use of the word matrix for the construct, which is described as like a shared hallucination between willing participants in that, but it's actually the space in which the hacker, the main character Case, is doing all of his work. You have a very interesting analog to Trinity in Neuromancer in the character of Molly Millions. I know, right? That's her street name, Molly Millions. But she is a very leather-clad, PVC clothing kind of person that feels very Trinity, but she extrudes razor blades from her fingertips.
So she's like if Trinity and Wolverine had a baby?
Yeah, or if she just copied Wolverine. And in that story, there's a space station that's known as Zion, which is where people who fight the establishment live. They're Rastafarian society. So
is this a direct rip?
It feels very close at points to what that is. But in this case, they're not like in the Matrix and out of the Matrix. The Matrix is just the space where these warring AIs factions live.
Got it.
And then they're ultimately, you find out, sort of spoiler, controlling everything behind the scenes. But there isn't like an alternate reality people are trapped in. The alternate reality is that people feel like they have control of things when they really don't. So there are a lot of similarities between the two. But doing the reading, I found that there is an even earlier mention of the use of Matrix for a simulated world, and that honor actually belongs to the Tom Baker era of Doctor Who. There is an episode where he fights the Master in The Matrix, which is an artificial construct where he is doing battle. So I figured that...
I bet the effects are even better there. I hope it's made out of trash bags. So many of the things at that time seem to be.
So I know we're at time. I just didn't want to leave without pointing at those.
No, that's fine. I have a couple things in terms of the releases of this. So 4 of the films were released on the series website back in the day. The others appeared on the DVD VHS release in 2003 that you're probably familiar with. There were lots of featurettes on that release and audio commentaries and a trailer for Enter the Matrix, which we established some of this was setting up that. Edited versions of these were shown on Adult Swim in 2004. Obviously, they had to be edited because there was a lot of nudity and stuff in those first, the Renaissance ones and whatever. Mm-hmm. And then later on several other channels at different times. They were screened in select cinemas just before The Matrix Reloaded was released. So, like you were pointing out, they sort of they were around the same time because Matrix Reloaded is Matrix 2. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why, in my mind, this feels more Matrix than Reloaded does.
Yeah, so I guess they came out right around the same time. So that's exactly what you said earlier. So cinema running order matches what is on HBO Max. So when you went to see that in the cinemas before The Matrix Reloaded, this is the order that's on HBO Max right now if you watch it, with that Flight of the Osiris being last. And then there's a Blu-ray release that came out. It's called the Ultimate Matrix Collection in 2012, which finally did include this Animatrix on Blu-ray on high def. Finally, after all that time. So,
oh my gosh. When's the 4K UHD Steelbook coming out?
I think that is sort of to date the best Matrix collection that they have released. I don't know that it's come out on like 4K or
Well, with
anything
4
yet, but
coming out soon, I think they might be
they
pulling another
might be-
Disney Vault
they might be
situation.
waiting to do something cool with
Some
it.
$3,000.
I can see it doing like a 3D
disc.
4K.
Oh, please don't do 3D.
I can
can't
see it
remember.
happening. Can you not see that with
Ugh.
I can see with the bullet stuff.
I can't take it anymore. I can't take them stopping time and rotating around something while hearing everywhere you went for years. Even in other movies, they did that.
We didn't talk about the music, but the music was like,
it was all over the place.
I mean,
there was music from it that I really loved, like that really metal bit at the end of the fall, the two-parter. I can't think of the name of it.
The Renaissance
one, where the horse is running across the field of old machines and bones, and it's just dun, 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 and it was just like, okay, that resonated really hard back in the you know.
It felt like I was watching The Crow.
I liked it. I like that.
I mean, it was what it was.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
Yeah, now I could.
It was very much that.
It's not on my rota nowadays, but I could go back and listen to some Matrix music, especially from the first movie. Put that Propeller Head song on there, or the Deftones one. I mean, I just really enjoyed that back in the day. Just heard them too many times, folks. Too many times.
So many times. So I think let's sort of look at some of our super chats.
Yeah. nice segue.
Thanks. I don't know if we have. I do too.
I saw one.
So hungry.
There was
one that's from Tree Theodore. So thank you so much. He says thanks for the show. And,
thank you, Tree.
Let's see. I'm gonna go down here, and we had one from Wicked Person.
Hey, Wicked.
He says, "Does the Matrix need a dark sky because of Dark City?"
I guess. I mean, it's early for the whole dark, trend that we noticed where everything was dark.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel like there are some aesthetic choices, but the Matrix kind of goes off on its own, in its own direction.
There's friction between those two. Matrix and Dark City.
Yeah, I know. I certainly prefer Dark City as a film.
It's got Kiefer Sutherland in it.
It does. And then Sean Stackhouse says, longtime viewer, first time super chatter. I love all of RB's content, and I have learned a lot about my favorite childhood properties. Metal horns. That's great, Sean. Thank you for joining us this Saturday morning. We know you could be watching cartoons, but instead you're watching
two human cartoons.
Two humans who we've established are very evil and deserve to be destroyed.
Yes.
So thank you.
With the rest of everyone. It's a very dark episode of Dreamland.
Connor says, small contribution toward the mic repair fund. Thank you. These are our new mics that we just got, and we got a new...
You're not hearing them, by the way. You'll hear them when we produce the
That's
final
right.
podcast.
And you'll hear them next week on the live stream.
You're hearing an invisible mic right here.
It's not invisible.
Is it poking down? Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah, don't you just bonk people on the head.
That's right.
We are working on patching our main soundboard in so that you hear through these mics. But I have to say, I like these mics. They're just solid.
They're little workhorse mics.
Yeah, they're good.
They're good for live streams.
They don't have the range that the others did, but I think these are
certainly adequate. And George says, test them by singing.
Oh, I don't know what to sing to the rest of you, but thank you for joining us.
Jolly Animatrix.
Animatrix
is a really weird show. I could have rehearsed that.
Or maybe
you can hear my stomach growling, because the mics are that good.
It's going
hungry.
Metal horns.
All right. Well, Aaron.
Yeah. John.
If you want to find us, you can find us.
Good luck.
That's right. You can find us on. Well, let's see. Where can you find us? I guess Retroblasting.
Total blank.
I totally went blank.
Retroblasting.com/Dreamland. Look, we did it. We synced up.
And you can send us emails at thedreamlandpodcast@gmail.com. And you can find us also coming up soon in just a month, if you can believe that, at
Oh,
iconicononline.com. Because
where you'll also see analog toys.
You will see analog toys, and we will be working a lot with lots of other great channels that we are super excited about working with them and doing content with them. It's sort of been this fun way of like really getting to know how other people do their shows and stuff like that. We're doing like a back and forth with Movie Oubliette, which is, as everyone knows, my new favorite obsession. So it's like,
and one of them uses these fine microphones.
So they're going to be on Dreamland. Those Conrad and Dan are coming over. They're going to be on our Dreamland podcast, and then we are going to go join them on their wonderful podcast called Movie Oubliette.
I'm so nervous,
and I am too. And I haven't even watched Leviathan yet. So we're doing The Abyss and Leviathan. So that will be a fun conversation.
Part of the quid pro quo.
It's right. It seems like those two movies are kind of linked, and I've never seen them before. So I think
what if we watch them and one of them they're watching the Animatrix?
Wow. What if it's like the Neverending Story and we're part of the movie?
Oh my gosh! Don't do this to me. I don't have enough burrito quotient.
So thank you guys for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And we will catch you next time.
See you later.
Bye.